And this is the round badge. So this identifies the Gretsch drums that were made before 1970. They call them round badge, and like pretty much if you have a round badge Gretsch, you know you have something special. 68 Gretsch, this is the sound of those, you know, those Miles albums, Tony Williams playing on it on all the quartet stuff, and Brian Blade still plays one to this day, and just really, really nice kits. They sound like 1969 jazz is what they pretty much sound like. Unmistakable. I did not have the money to buy it, so I hid it in the store. I hid it behind the crappiest cymbals I could find, buried like 10 cymbals deep in a bin. I knew we'd be back. So 7 or 8 months later, came playing in the same town again, Tampa or something. And I went back to the music store and it was still there. No one had found it. And I had one kid come up to me after a gig once and say, "Man, your drums sound awesome, but it's like your cymbals are so dirty. Don't you want to clean them?" And I, right in front of him, had a beer in my hand because it was after the gig. And I just poured the beer over the cymbal like that. I just drenched it. And I was like, what is it? It's a cymbal. Like, there's nothing you can do to it that's gonna make it sound bad. And I certainly don't care about how they look. And see, you can see on my bass drum, this is why I want to write this stuff out when I audition, because I'm a very visual learner. So I've got music written all over my bass drum of little licks I've been trying, because if I don't write them down, I forget them. I was playing a lot of sideman gigs in New York after my full-time touring band had kind of imploded. So instead of doing 250 nights a year with one group, I was on my own again and looking for gigs. A friend of a friend told me that Cirque du Soleil holds auditions all over the place all the time, and they were doing auditions in New York. They requested that I send a press package, and waited a couple weeks, and I got an email back that said, "Got your package, loved it. You've been approved to audition. Here is your schedule date. Please call to confirm." Well, first of all, it's New York. They're gonna get the best. And they may hear 20 or 30, I have no idea, 50 people, but they know that exactly the right person for the gig is gonna walk through that door. I don't think that they're too worried that they need to coddle anybody who didn't do great. They know what they're looking for. So I confirmed, and I started kind of calling friends in the industry saying, "Hey, what do you know about Cirque du Soleil auditions? How can I prepare for this?" I had bought every Cirque du Soleil record and was playing along with it, but it's all vibe stuff. It's groove. It's, you know, for the jugglers, for the contortionists, and I didn't really hear songs in it, so I was just playing along. I talked to a couple people who said, "Oh, it's tricky, man. It's not much I can tell you about it, and there's not much you can prepare. You just gotta just be on top of your game." I show up at the place, totally, you know, run down industrial building in Manhattan, like nondescript door. Open the door, walk down a dark hallway, find the suite number, open it up, and it's like, you know, $4 million studio behind this door. Every instrument ready to play, music stands everywhere, full audio racks, speakers, everything. The beginning, before I even started drumming, was they wanted me to make faces for the camera. They said, often we have the musicians as part of the show. So not that you're required to participate in the show, but we want to see your happy face, and we want to see your sad clown face, and we want to see your excited face, and we want to see your serious, you know, your angry face. And we're just going to take some stills so we know whether you're one of those guys that we could use in the show. They said, "Here's what we're going to do. Sit down, get comfortable with the kit, adjust anything you want. Obviously, position is important. We're gonna put on some music, some Cirque du Soleil stuff, and you just play along with it. This isn't really part of the audition. This is just for you to get comfortable with the kit, but we are listening." So they put on this real straight funk, like world funk, Afro funk thing, and straight time in 4, really easy to follow. And you know, I play a little bit, adjust a cymbal, play a little bit, you know, move my stool and everything. It was just a straight funk thing. It was just part was, and the reason I knew I was nervous is because, I mean, this is a generalization, but usually you come down on the downbeat in a funk thing. It's always the same. Bass drum and crash cymbal. Little fill. One thing that I kept doing, even at the first part of this audition, was I was coming down on the snare and the cymbal all the time, which sounds like this. Which is not good. It's not what you want to be doing all the time. It's a cool effect, but you don't want to be going to the snare every time you hit one, because the snare is kind of for the backbeats. That's for 2 and 4, you know. And I was getting some nice eyebrows, you know, 3 guys, they're sitting in front of me at a table 40 feet away in this big studio, and I was getting some good looks. So I was like, okay, they must like what I'm doing here. That made me feel good. It was still kind of out of my element. Like, I'm still not used to sitting down at a strange drum kit in a studio, 3 guys watching me. So for me, there were some weird little hiccups, things that I don't normally do. So I knew I was nervous because I wasn't just playing. I was thinking about it, and that's not always a good thing. So, but I took their looks of approval as positive. You comfortable? I said, yeah. They said, okay, so here's the second part of the audition. We're going to put on another track. But this time, just listen. It's about 1.5 minutes long. It's got drums in it. It's a full band track. Just listen. When you're done listening, we're going to play it back without the drums. And we want you to play exactly what you heard. We really want you to copy the part, which is something I'm come from a improvisational background. Even, you know, the band that I played with 20 years, we had intricate parts that we had to learn, but 70% of the bulk of the music was improv, and that's what we worked on, was interacting. No, there's no interaction here. This is play it back, carbon copy. So they play it for me. It's, like I said, 1.5 minutes long. It was tricky. A lot of on-time signatures, but still pretty easy to remember, logically laid out. Couple little vocal breaks where I got to lay out, listen to the choruses come swelling in, then there's a little bass fill, and I'm back in 5/4, you know, a couple bars of 6 here and there. Nothing weird. I didn't play it perfectly. I played it close. I got some nods. They're writing. But, you know, by the end of 1.5 minutes, I was starting to lose track of what had happened at the beginning. So the further I got through the track, probably the less accurately I played it. The second track that they played for me was kind of like that. It was a little bit more kind of like new agey. It was in 5 instead of 4, which kind of means you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. It's got 1 extra beat in it, which is not hard to play, but again, the breaks would come. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not much harder than that, but it was really hard to remember when the breaks happened. And the third one, he goes, okay, this is it. You're almost done. I was like, wow, this has only been like 5 or 8 minutes, you know. That's quick. And they say this one's a little longer, and it's a little trickier. So listen carefully. I said, can I jot down some stuff? Can I write while I'm, no pen, no pencil, memory only. I'm like, okay, man, all right. So they play it, and it's this super fast klezmer Czechoslovakian folk tune in 9 with breaks in, 13 beat breaks and clarinet solos that I'm supposed to play along with verbatim. And then halfway through it, I knew, I was like, wow, I'm sunk, man. I was already having trouble remembering the first half when the second half was beginning. And so I was like, okay, just try and find a form, try and find the time signature that's the most prevalent. And I'm listening and they stop it. And they're like, okay, are you ready? And I was like, are you sure I can't write this down? I said, if I can write this down, I know I could nail 90% of it better. And they said, no, we can't write it down. I said, okay. So they play it, and I pretty much fell all over myself. I mean, I could play the groove in 9, but I was missing half of the breaks, and then, you know, these little segues that change the time signature, and there was all odd meter. There was nothing normal about it, which I enjoy, but I usually get to learn the stuff, and I had no opportunity to learn it. I just had to memorize it. Didn't do a very good job. Made it to the end, and you know, didn't see any of the approving looks that I had seen in the first 2 passes. They were like, okay, you know, we'll get back with you in a second. We're just going to leave the room. Coffee over there. Make yourself at home. We'll be back in a few minutes. Really, really nice. Thing is with the Zildjian cymbals, even if you get the same, you know, this is a dark crash thin 17-inch, but that doesn't mean that every dark crash thin 17-inch is going to sound even remotely like one another, because that's the best thing about Zildjian. They're hand hammered, 50% handmade. And so when you find the one you like, you got to grab it, because you can't just be like, oh, okay, I like that kind. It's the individual cymbal that really... And I had a professor at Berkeley even who used to buy his cymbals new and bury them for like a year in the dirt. Because he said he wanted all the grime on them. The more stuff is on them, the darker they sound. And if you're a fan of the dark sound like I am, you want that crap on it. You want it green and blotchy. And so I'll never forget the look on that kid's face when I poured a beer over my favorite cymbal to prove that it didn't have any effect, any negative effect at all. And they came back in and they said, well, let us start by saying that you did great, although you're half the age of most of the people that audition. They were like, I think I was probably 25 or 30. I was closer to 30 when I auditioned. They said, no, we really see 50, 55, 60-year-old musicians in these auditions, which I didn't really get because I've been to a few Cirque du Soleils. I see mostly young guys. But they're all in makeup and they're kind of like playing a role. So I was like, okay, that's good to know. They were like, we want you to come back. But come back in like 10 years. Which I'd only been playing for like 25 years at that point. So I was like, okay, 30% more of my drumming life they want. And they said, we really need you to have this stuff memorized on first pass, which again was totally new for me. I was not a session guy. I was not a parts guy. I was an improv fusion player. And I said, well, why can't I write it down? You know, if I wrote it down, I would have had most of these parts that, you know, it's a long segment. They said, well, here's why. We need you to be able to go from measure 57 to measure 119 on a command in your earbud without dropping a beat, because the juggler just dropped the ball and they're going off stage and the next act is coming on prematurely, and we can't have you flipping pages and referencing sections. We really need the whole show memorized. Not in my comfort zone. They said, you know, work on your rhythmic accuracy, which to a drummer, that's digging the knife deep, you know, because that's what we do. They said, try and, you know, work on playing along with more rhythmically complex stuff like, you know, Frank Zappa, for instance. And I just wilted because Zappa is my man. I can play all the Zappa stuff. And but apparently not well enough. 15 years ago, that was a good kick in the ass. And I did not go back 10 years later because the other thing was they can move you anywhere. So had I gotten the gig, they could have sent me to Vegas or LA or Miami. And I don't know if I was ready for that. So I was like, well, I don't want to move. So maybe I don't want to audition, because what if they told me I had to move and I wanted to take the gig? I don't want to move. I did go and see the show that I auditioned for. About 6 months later, I forget what it was called. You know, they each have a theme, but it was on Randall's Island in New York. And I went to see it, and this was the guy who got the gig that, you know, I flubbed. And when I saw the guy that got the gig, I totally knew why he got the gig and why I didn't. This guy, not only did he have every piece of world percussion around him. I mean, he played tabla, he played djembe authentically, like not like, New York guy learns to play tabla for the Cirque du Soleil gig. This guy had been playing tabla 10 or 15 years. Hand percussion, not just playing the rhythms, authentic technique. He was amazing. And he was all in costume. And he was up on stage half the time interacting with the people on stage while playing, and then jumping back down into the pit and jumping to measure, 119 without looking at the music like exactly the way they described it. And I remember just saying, wow, yeah, man, that guy totally deserved the gig. And I did not. I didn't feel that bad about it. It was fun to do an audition that was over my head. And I had a mentor for years who kind of got me into drumming, who said, go to every audition. He said, go to the auditions you know you're not going to get. He's like, auditioning is just as hard as playing. And for every audition you go to that you don't get, your next audition will be better. He said, don't worry about, don't think about, do you have a shot at it? Don't even care. Just auditioning. He's like, you're going to not get 9 out of 10 gigs, but that's nerve-wracking. And so I just chalked it up to like, okay, that was tough. It was a kick in the ass. I need to learn my Zappa better. And I didn't worry about it because, again, I would not have been comfortable jumping up on stage in a clown outfit, playing like tabla strapped to my chest with jugglers. I couldn't have pulled it off. It's not my thing. So that was my Cirque du Soleil audition. I still think to this day, I mean, they told me to come back 10 years later. I'm still scared to go back, for sure.